Ladies and gentlemen, here we are. We've made it. The playoffs for the NBA are here. The WNBA draft is going about as swimmingly as I thought. We'll talk about that in a moment. Congratulations once again to the Florida Gators for winning their third title. They defeated Houston in the final in a thriller in which Houston could not get a shot off at the end. And Houston and Florida had to knock off the two title favorites in the Auburn and Duke just to get to that point. And yet, that game was absolutely amazing. On the other hand, the women's side was, just as predictable as you could expect. Unfortunately, our girl Juju Watkins got hurt, so we did not get a UCLA rematch in the Final Four. We did not get that. Instead, we got UConn, UCLA, and UConn led by that very, number one draft pick, Paige Bueckers, as he Fudd, Sarah Sanders, absolutely stomped UCLA and then beat the brakes off of South Carolina a second time this year in order to capture a championship. And of course, UConn had to get through my Texas Longhorns to get here. Texas Longhorns, you can't shoot threes, but it's okay. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine, man. It's fine. A lot of gals are going to abuse the transfer portal. Let's just keep that at 150%. A lot of people are going to abuse the transfer portal. It's fine. It's totally fine. Yeah, the NBA playoffs. Let's talk about that real quick. So the Phoenix Suns did not make it. Ended up firing their head coach. Of course, so many coaches got fired over the past couple of days. So many. Phoenix's coach, Memphis's coach, Denver's coach, Michael Malone. So many people got fired, which is insane to me. Why are we doing this like the NHL? That's my thing. It got chaotic after the Lakers locked up the 3 seed, and the West had to shuffle around a lot. The Nuggets, the Clippers, the Rockets, the Nuggets, Clippers, Timberwolves, Warriors, and Grizzlies were all kind of in this weird position where they could be anywhere from 4 to 8, and it ended up being Memphis, who with John Morant, doing finger gun celebrations and getting fined by the league, which is crazy. And the Golden State Warriors with Jimmy Butler, now at the helm, helping out Steph and the rest of that Warriors team. Somehow that is going to be one of the most entertaining of the play-in games by far. Because Orlando, so many injuries kind of messed them up, throughout the rest of the season. And then Atlanta, Miami, and Chicago just do not need to be here. But it is what it is. And again, because of Phoenix being an absolute failure, the Dallas Mavericks, who have also gone through some pain, and make it, as the 10. And then, the Kings will be the team that they play to see who, gets those final 2 spots. So, Oklahoma City and Cleveland cleared 1 and 2. Boston also won, over 60 games this year. And, the Pistons are back, which is crazy. They're playing the Knicks in the first round, but I don't think we're going to get to something too crazy. Now, like the conference finals could be a little bit crazy in one instance, but ultimately what we have now with the way the Lakers have been playing with Luka Doncic and LeBron James and the rest of that team, being the way it is, I think we're gonna get the NBA guys, the NBA rights holders and the TV execs. We're gonna get them all pretty happy here. With my prediction is, I do believe it will be the Lakers and the Boston Celtics. I do think Oklahoma City and Cleveland have a chance. In fact, I think both will make the conference final. But I think at the end of the day, it's gonna be wild out west yet again. Look at the matchups out west. You have the Ant-Man, taking on the Lakers. Who cannot stop pulling off baby mamas. You have the Clippers with Harden and crew going up against the triple-double king, Nikola Jokic. And Oklahoma City and Cleveland await, Oklahoma City, Cleveland, and Houston. Very surprising Houston team. And again, the Boston Celtics, they await the 4 play-in teams. So, again, I do think it will be the Lakers and the Celtics all the way. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, just dynamic, Boston squad. There's not just those two. It is a piece by piece type situation. And although the Cavs have Mitchell and Garland and Jared Allen and others, I just don't see it happening. And although Oklahoma City has SGA, I just don't see it happening. I think maybe next year these two teams, could get even farther. But, something unexpected always does happen. At least one series gets a little weird. Not all of them, because most series in the first round don't tend to be very entertaining. But I do think at least one could be entertaining. Like, again, the Pacers Bucks could be intriguing to watch. Doc Rivers and Tyrese Halliburton, going to be facing off. And Giannis Antetokounmpo, has been kind of lagging, in the injury cycle. Again, Jalen Brunson, Kalen Cunningham in that Knicks Pistons matchup should be fun. And I think, the 4-5, 3-6 matchups are probably the more intriguing matchups the first round. Again, these just have the most potential to get chaotic, because, again, these can go either way in many cases. So, again, that's what I think. It's gonna be Boston. It's gonna be those LA Lakers. Now, the other piece of the puzzle. The WNBA, so graciously has basically made it known for, pretty much the entire off season. Pretty much everybody knows who's coming to Dallas. It will be Paige Bueckers coming to Dallas as the number 1 overall pick. So it will be Paige. Dallas again. A lot of moving pieces throughout the WNBA. And due to Unrivaled as well. So a lot of moving pieces have been around, but it is what it is. And thus, not only does Bueckers get a, nice rookie contract, she will also get a lucrative contract in Unrivaled. And again, Unrivaled, has touted that they nearly broke even this past year, which I don't really buy that. But, I mean, I can see it because of all the corporate sponsorships and all the, and things basically being sold out in one arena every single night, because they kept the arena small to where they can, keep business moving. All the corporate partnerships and sponsors and stuff like that, cause them to break nearly even. They still lost money, in the social media engagement, which is another thing that, again, people just don't seem to get. Like, social media engagement is one big thing and can make you some money. So I think, Unrivaled doing what they did, they will continue to capitalize on stuff like this, and a lot of people compare, I saw one comparison, like Unrivaled social media is like a steak dinner, and a WNBA's social media is like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Just the big downgrade. But again, social media is just one component. Not everything on social media, is cookies and cream. Like I said, social media can take a toll on you. So, it can take a toll on somebody that's doing it, and that is one thing that, has happened. So, the G League finals also happened, which I don't really care for, but, the Magic and the Kings affiliates, they got to the finals. The G League, in college basketball, so many coaches, so many players going through NIL, and it's, it's going to be weird to see, where some people end up, like Will Wade is no longer at McNeese, he's somewhere else. I forgot where he is off the top of my head, I think we are heading into a season next year. We had Cooper Flagg and Janai Broom, kind of just tearing it up the entire season. I think we're heading into a year next season in college basketball where, things could get a little bit different. We may have something completely different again. Honestly, the up until like the Final Four, Elite Eight for the most part, things were kind of boring. Things were kind of boring on the men's side. Women's side, of course, it was boring until the Elite Eight. What do you mean? We had some good games, throughout both brackets, but ultimately not a lot of upsets. And the lack of parity and the strong teams this year made it more intriguing in some ways and less interesting in other ways. So, I don't know how I really feel about it, but I do feel that we got a strong Final Four on both sides of the brackets this year. We really did. We really did. The four teams that needed to make it made it. Like again, everybody was doubting my Texas Longhorns, but Big Schaefer, was like, all right, let's lock in. And Texas made it all the way to the Final Four. But at the end of the day, congratulations again to the Florida men and the UConn women. You both get a national championship. Congratulations to all 20 teams in the NBA playoffs. You made it. Congratulations to Paige Bueckers for being the number 1 draft pick in the WNBA this year. And along with the other draftees is, by the time this video will be up, the WNBA draft will be over. So again, from me to you, I'm going to get on up out of here, and we'll talk again later. Talk this weekend into football tomorrow, and then we'll talk some lacrosse later this week. We'll talk some NHL playoffs later this week. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun week. Cannot wait to get it all to you, and I'm going to get on up out of here. See you later.